Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Give me a quick hello in the comments and tell me where you're joining from. I'm going to start with a confession. When my co-author, Dr. Cottrell Welsh, and I were writing the book, Winning with AI, we built an entire AI readiness assessment. Everything, all the weights, all the different assessment questions you could have. We spent weeks on it. It was very comprehensive. It was very rigorous. I personally love building assessments, and it had a beautiful scoring system. And then we threw it out. And not because it was bad, but because we realized that it was wrong. I'm just going to check something. I just realized that my audio is not good. So let me start that over again. I should have checked this right before. Yes, it is all good now. Thank goodness. All right. So not because we threw it all out, not because we thought it was bad, but because we realized it was wrong. It was the wrong approach. And today I'm going to go in and talk to you about exactly why we figured that out and how we approached it instead. If you've ever been told to do a readiness assessment before you move forward with AI, and even if you're the person who has been recommending it to others, this conversation is for you. I'm Charlene Lee. I'm a New York Times bestselling author, and my new book, Winning with AI, The 90-Day Blueprint for Success, co-authored with my wonderful friend, Dr. Cottrell Welsh, comes out on March 24th. And today we're going to go deep on one of the most counterintuitive ideas in the book, and that is this question of doing a readiness assessment. So let me start by describing and sharing a scene that plays out in organizations every day. A leadership team, let me get rid of this. A leadership team gets serious about AI. Someone, often a consultant, sometimes an internal team member, says, before we do anything with AI, we need to do an assessment about our readiness. And so they launch an assessment, they survey people, they audit data, they score the culture, and they benchmark against a bunch of competitors. Weeks go by, sometimes even months. And the readiness reports come back. And there's the thing that nobody says out loud. The report almost always tells you that you're not ready. Your data is a mess, your culture is risk averse, and your governance processes are way too slow, and your talent has gaps. Of course it does. If you're trying to do an assessment of readiness, that's the nature of them. They're designed to surface all the gaps, and they will always find them. So the question becomes, if you are doing a readiness assessment, what are you doing with them? How are you actually finding value for them? If you're doing one or you have done one, I would love to hear from you, because I do think they have their place. But this is my frustration. You do the readiness assessment and it comes back typically with a number. Maybe you get a 62 out of 100. Okay, great. Now what do you do? Do you wait until you're an 80 before you get started? What do you do with the information from the readiness? And this is the key thing that we realized in our research and in our writing. You've just spent weeks, maybe months, doing this assessment, and you still haven't made a single strategic decision. This is the problem that we find. People do the assessments and they are busy, so they feel good about it, and they're getting things done to get an answer thing. Like, look, this is our readiness assessment. And the problem is that you haven't spent that time identifying high value AI applications. You haven't moved any closer to delivering real value with AI. And the finding that we realized was that the readiness assessment doesn't eliminate risk. It doesn't help you figure out what those key decisions are going to be. It just delays progress and gives uncertainty a more official looking name. So here's the harder truth. Waiting until you're ready, so to speak, is itself a competitive risk. While you're assessing, your competitors are shipping. The companies winning with AI are the ones who aren't, not the ones, people who are winning with AI are not the ones who are preparing the longest, preparing the best. They're the ones who start moving and making decisions, and they learn as they go along and they fill the gaps as they go along. So readiness is a myth. You'll never be ready. And no, it's not because that preparation doesn't matter. It's because the sequence that you're doing this is backwards. That was the key finding that we had. So we want to talk a little bit about this assessment, and I would love to hear from you if you've been in this sort of loop of assessment analysis paralysis. I love this quote that says that readiness assessment equals risk avoidance. Absolutely, it is. So I love assessments. I have built an entire career on building assessments, understanding what good looks like, and describing to people, this is what you need to do to get to that point. Believe, though, that AI is a very different beast, and mostly because speed is so important. And so, what Katya and I argue in the book, and what we've seen in practice in many organizations, is that the sequence should look like this. Number one, you start with your business strategy. Then you identify how AI can support it. Then you assess the gaps between what you are able to do today and what is needed to execute on that strategy. The key here is that it's not the other way around. You don't start with assessment to figure out what the gaps are because they're going to be there. It's actually a purpose and tailored assessment of the gaps to execute on a very specific application that you know is going to create value for your organization. And because it's much more focused and targeted, it is much faster. And we say in the book, it's a great quote from Vikram Mahidar, that speed is a new mode. You have to go fast and you have to be able to make decisions. So an assessment, a full-blown readiness assessment feels great, but we believe that it doesn't actually serve you. So let me talk a little bit about this. The reason why this sequence is so important is that your business priorities won't wait for your AI readiness. And if your plan requires you expanding into new markets or improving customer retention or cutting operational costs, those imperatives exist regardless of your AI maturity. The strategy is non-negotiable. So instead of asking, are we ready for AI? You should be asking, what does AI need to do to support what we've already decided what matters? Once you have clarity on your strategy and how AI is going to support you, then do the gap analysis, do that assessment. And the gap assessment becomes a completely different animal when you do it then versus if you do at the beginning of the process. Because instead of a broad, abstract audit that exists outside of your strategic plan, you're now looking at something that is very specific. Do we have what we need to deliver on a particular AI application for this particular business outcome, for this particular timeline? It is very specific. It is very driven by strategy. And in the book, we organize this around 4 building blocks. Let me just see if there are any particular questions we have here. This person says, well said, while you are preparing, your competitors are shipping. So here we go, are shipping. So again, exactly where, and again, I think the speed and the ability to go make decisions to get to that point is absolutely essential. So one of the things that we do is in the book, talk about these 4 building blocks. And I just want to put them up here for you to see. These 4 building blocks are the ways that you actually deliver AI value. And these are the places where you want to do an assessment to say, if this is what our strategic goals are, we want to use AI, then where are we in these 4 areas? What are the gaps that we have in these 4 areas? And the areas are the mindset, for example. Does your culture support the speed and the experimentation and the customer focus that AI requires? Are leaders modeling curiosity, or are they resisting? The skill set is, do you have people who have the AI fluency, the collaboration skills, and the technical depth to build, use, and scale AI to do what you're trying to deploy? And then a tool set, do you have the data, the models, and infrastructure to power the very specific applications you've prioritized. And then the decision set. Do you have the governance frameworks that let you move fast and responsibly? Can you make AI decisions in days and not months for the ones that you need to make for this particular application? So again, I think you're beginning to see it. These categories, these key areas of building these building blocks are really important, but they do not exist in a theoretical way. They exist in the context of the way that you are going to use AI to create value. So the power of doing this after you set your plan is that these questions now have a very specific answer. Instead of getting a score, you're actually asking and saying of thinking about, for example, data readiness. You're asking for a Q2 customer service AI deployment. Do we have the customer interaction data we need? And if not, how long will it take to get to it? So that's a question you can actually answer and then make decisions on and act on. So the way to think about this, and this is something that we figured out. You think of it as like a pre-flight check before you take off. You don't cancel the plan in the flight because the check has issues. You fix what needs to be fixed so that you can take off. The building blocks are a similar assessment that tells you what to fix and when, so you can fly the route that you've already committed to. So I just see a couple other comments here. Let's see. So true. Speed is a new moat. Business priorities won't wait for your AI readiness, and strategy is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. And this is a question, what start moving looks like in an environment with lower risk tolerance? Okay, that's a great question. What does start moving look like? And this is a great question. I'm going to talk a little bit about this because in the context of the pushback you will get from organizations who go, what do you mean we're not doing assessment? We're just going to go and get started. So to answer that particular question, if people have a lower risk tolerance, you are going to get pushback. So let me just go through a couple of different types of pushbacks that we've seen. The number one is we're not ready. And in particular, our data is a mess. This is the most common pushback we get. So we need to do an assessment to understand what our data looks like, and we have to clean our data and make it perfect before AI can use it. And it feels right. It feels really responsible to say that. But this is what we found. And this comes from Katya's deep experience as a chief data officer, as a chief AI officer. Data is always a mess. That's the reality. In every organization, at every maturity level, data is a mess. The question isn't whether your data gaps are actual. The real question is your data a real blocker to you being able to execute on that specific initiative? Or whether you're just generally uncomfortable with the reality that your data is messy. So a targeted gap assessment would answer that question. And the answer is often that you can move forward on your highest priority AI readiness, AI applications with the data you have, or it needs a bit of fixing, and you can even use AI to get it ready, while you clean up what you need for later applications. So doing things in parallel rather than sequentially, like having all of your data ready, cleaned up, again, to the extent that you can, and ready to go before you can do anything. So the pushback here is we know our data is a mess. How messy is it? How much can we use of it to get started going as soon as possible? I like to think about it as what's the minimum data that we need to be able to execute on this AI initiative. It is not perfect data. What's the minimum data quality we need to be able to get started and get to that point as quickly as you can? The second pushback is, well, this is all great, but we need to get our executives on board first. And this is where this process really works and shines. The business plan, your strategic objectives, is how you get executive agreement. When you frame AI around your highest priorities that leadership has already committed to, not a separate AI initiative, then you're speaking their language. And the gap assessment then becomes a resource conversation, not a readiness debate. So the question becomes, here's our business strategy. We've identified AI to do this. Here's our gap. What resources are we willing to throw against that gap so that we can realize the value that AI is going to create against this business initiative, business strategic objective that we have? And the third pushback, and this one usually comes from consultants, is you need a comprehensive baseline before you can start so that you can measure progress. And I get this. I understand the instinct. And the problem is that building a comprehensive baseline before any real AI work has begun is theoretical. So, for example, you thought your data was the problem, but it turns out that the bigger gap is that frontline managers don't trust the AI outputs coming out of data. You may have assumed that your team lacks specific technical skills, but the real bottleneck you find is that no one has authority to make fast decisions when AI produces an unexpected result. So, again, understanding the gaps at the beginning of the project becomes very different because as you start doing it, and you'll find that the most accurate gap assessment you ever do is about 2 weeks into your first deployment, because doing the work reveals things that no survey ever could. So build your baseline around what you're actually doing, around what you actually need to be successful, not about a hypothetical future state. All right, let me see if there are any questions. Nope. Okay, we'll keep going then. All right, so let me talk about the last pushback. And this one is very real. It's about the emotions that are coming because of the lack of an assessment being there. For many leaders, a readiness assessment feels like a warm security blanket. And it also is this emotion that if we don't start, we can't fail. And in the space of all the uncertainty with AI, it feels really risky. So the assessment gives you something to do that looks like progress without forcing the harder decisions that you have to make, the choices you have to make about priorities, about trade offs, about what you're willing to commit to. So I see this especially with leaders who are new to AI or who feel like they're behind. And there's this quiet fear that they're not saying, what if we start and we do it wrong? And here's what I want you to hear. You will do it imperfectly. This is not a risk to manage. This is a process that we have to go through. And the organizations that are winning with AI are the ones who start before they have all the answers. They are building the plane as they're flying it, and they got better faster than anyone who waited on the ground. I want to give one example of this. Klarna, the payments company, is often held up as a horror story of AI gone wrong. The headline is they hired 700 people, 800 people, and customer satisfaction cratered. The fuller story is much more interesting. And this is, again, I've just been digging into it because I'm just so fascinated by them. They very aggressively pushed on OpenAI to power their customer service until it was doing the work of roughly 800 agents and handling 2/3 of all chats. So the early metrics look great, really fast resolutions, fewer repeat contacts. But they pushed more and more volume to AI. As they pushed more and more volume to AI, they found that the quality dropped, especially on the more complex and emotionally charged issues, and their customer satisfaction scores fell. The CEO has since then been very public that they focused too much on efficiency and costs, and they were now adding back humans into the loop for these higher level conversations while continuing to scale AI. Now, this looks like a hot mess on the surface. But the reality is, I don't think it's failure. This is exactly what real AI strategy looks like. You make a bet, you watch the metrics, you admit where you overshot or underestimated, then rebalance based on the evidence rather than ideology. So the ready assessment is often a way to procrastinate the genuine hard work you need to be doing and making tough choices about what matters most, what you're willing to fund, and also what you're going to stop doing. The gap assessment done after you set the plan forces those choices, and that's uncomfortable. But that's the productive kind of uncomfortable. Okay, so I want to hear from you. Are there any questions you have about this? Where have you been stuck? Drop into the comments. All right, let me see if there are any comments. Here's another one. We are a mission-driven, let me see if I can put it in here so people can see it. We are a mission-driven organization. Does the conversation look different in mission-driven or highly regulated environments? Not only with the risk tolerance shifts the calculus, but also with public accountability. It doesn't, because it's even more important, because if you are driven by mission, then you have your objectives of what you are trying to achieve. You know what the top 3 opportunities are or the top 3 problems getting in the way of you achieving your purpose and your mission and your strategy. So identify those first. Start with those, because everyone is in agreement. This is really important to us. Then you figure out how AI can support it, and then you do the gap analysis. Again, it's not that you never do the gap analysis. And you do a readiness assessment. You are doing an assessment. It's more the timing of when you do it and also why you are doing it. Again, this is not to remove all of the risk. It is to understand what are the things that we need to be successful. And one of the things is risk. So again, having that assessment done is a great way to have that accountability. And I go back to, if you were to go and look at all the things that could possibly derail you, you are going to spend so much time looking at all those possibilities rather than focusing on the most important things that need to be there in terms of resources, of people, tools, etc., in order for this to be a success. All right. So here's another question from Leonardo. What's the real role of leadership and board to help the company to achieve a new company that can achieve success in the AI era? Great question. Again, it goes back to the sequence of this process. What is our business strategy? Let's be super clear about this. And I say this with a little bit of tongue in cheek, because people think, oh yeah, we know what our business strategy is. Just go and test it. If you go ask people, what is our business strategy? What are our biggest strategic goals? And unless it's an organization that is thinking about this front and center every single day, you're going to get a lot of different answers. And so even just that process of agreeing, these are our top strategic goals, writing them down and saying and agreeing, whatever we do with AI has to support these top initiatives, these top objectives. That is a very interesting process in of itself. Then you can decide how to use AI to support them, and then you do the assessment. And then when you do the assessment, you have to, okay, let me just go into these next steps before I go and do anything else. And let me also just put up the link so you can get that one beautiful slide about the building blocks. So let me just quickly close out and talk about the 4 things that you need to do once you have the assessment. So to do all of this. So step 1, figure out what your business priority is that AI needs to support. Not we want to use AI, but something very specific. We want to retain our top customer segment. We want to reduce time to quote. Here's another example, improve employee onboarding. So pick one priority just to start. That's your anchor. Step 2, identify 1 or 2 AI applications that would be meaningful in terms of moving the needle on that priority. So don't boil the ocean. Pick something you can deploy. Let's say in the next quarter, you can actually see a quick win that is going to move the needle on that particular strategic objective. Think about where you interact with customers, where decisions are made, where work is repetitive and data rich. Step 3, run the gap assessment across the 4 building blocks, but only for that application. Spend 90 minutes. Take you, your AI lead, maybe a couple of key stakeholders. You already know your organization. You know where the bodies are. You know where the capabilities are. Ask, where do we stand today? What gaps could slow our delivery of this application? And what's the timeline to close those gaps? And then step 4, sequence your work. If you need 6 weeks to train your team, then start that in week 1, not in week 5. Weave these building block developments and advancements into your roadmap. Don't treat it like a separate track that has to finish before the real work begins. So you're looking at what's needed to actually create the AI applications, and you're looking at what your building block gaps are, and you're putting them into an integrated roadmap and plan. So let me just close by saying this. Readiness is not a destination. It is just a capability you build as you move and you make decisions. And the organizations that are winning with AI are not the ones who have better data, who are building bigger budgets, or have less fear. They have a clear plan and they start regardless of where they are. They just get started. So that's what I have for today. I hope you enjoy that. And I hope you will join me next week too, as well. Again, on Tuesday, March 10th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And I'll be discussing the importance of unlearning before you can learn. And all of us will be are on some trajectory of learning, whether you're still trying to figure out how to do prompting or you're installing OpenClaw on some mini Mac you've had sitting in the back closet. So good luck to you if you're doing that. Stay safe. But we're all learning new things. And what I have found is that unlearning is a very important process of that. So I'll get into that next week as well. So until then, have fun out there and stay safe. Take care.